The UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he's heading to Luxembourg next week for a meeting with the European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker to discuss the rough shape of a Brexit withdrawal agreement. This comes at the end of a dramatic week. The Speaker of the House of Commons has warned Mr Johnson against breaking the law. MPs blocked his second bid for an early election. A Scottish court ruled that the suspension of Parliament is illegal, and documents were released predicting damaging consequences of a no-deal Brexit. Well, Mr Johnson was also forced to deny that he had lied to the Queen when requesting the suspension of Parliament. Many UK citizens want MPs back at work, as the Prime Minister heard today during a speech in Rotherham.
I know the transformative potential of local accountable leadership. Someone with the power to sort out what matters most to local people.
Like our MPs, Boris.
Yes,
Maybe get
indeed.
back to Parliament.
Indeed.
Yeah?
Yes, I'm all in favour of our MPs.
Yeah, why are you not with them in Parliament?
Would you?
Out the mess that you have created.
Would you mind? I'm very happy to get back to Parliament very soon. But what we want, I think, to see in this what we want to see in this region is towns and communities able to represent that gentleman and sort out his needs.
Well, for more on this story, let's speak to our correspondent in the UK, Vincent McAviney now. Vincent, as we just seen there, Boris Johnson coming under yet more pressure, being heckled again. He's made quite a feature this week of his People's Question time. How's he holding up?
Good afternoon, Tokes. Well, just you listing all of that shows what a dramatic week it has been. It's been tiring just keeping up with it all, and the week really isn't done yet. Boris Johnson was up north today giving that speech that we heard the clip from there where he was heckled, and it really has to be said his performance in the speech wasn't the usual bombastic Boris Johnson that we're used to. It was a bit like his speech last week in Yorkshire at the police academy there. He sort of stumbled through it. He didn't do particularly well on the questioning. He didn't do well when he was heckled, and prior to the speech he'd been in a market as well where he was confronted by people, one woman particularly who was sort of saying, well, where's all this money coming from you're pledging? You said that we needed austerity and now you've got money for everything. So Boris Johnson continuing to have a very difficult week of it. MPs unhappy across the board still that they're not in that place, the House of Commons, poring over these Yellowhammer no-deal planning documents, asking the government questions, getting responses. And I think it's going to be a difficult weekend as well, because next week, former Prime Minister David Cameron's autobiography, 3 Years in the Writing, comes out. And I don't think he's going to have many kind words for Prime Minister Johnson or Michael Gove as well, who is the person in charge of no-deal planning in the government.
Vincent, we heard when the Prime Minister was being heckled there, he was asked why he isn't heading to Brussels for talks with EU leaders. We do know he's going to Luxembourg to meet Jean-Claude Juncker, but he's on his way out, so what's the point of that?
Yeah, it is a really strange meeting by the Prime Minister to meet with Juncker because he is, as you say, on his way out. And many people have wondered why the Prime Minister didn't go to Brussels sooner, why he's had bilaterals in Paris and in Berlin. And they're saying, you know, we've learnt this week that the team negotiating with the EU has been massively scaled down. So as much as the Prime Minister says he's really focused on getting a deal, it hasn't seemed so. And all of the work seems to be putting in to the no-deal planning. And we've seen that this week with the defence by the government of the Yellowhammer document by Michael Gove, talking about the billions that they've put in and how the public advertising campaign was working. But next week it's going to be increasingly difficult for the Prime Minister because, you know, away from all the things that have happened this week, the drama will continue to build because the Supreme Court case, which starts on Tuesday, is a follow-on from the matter discussed in the Scottish one, in which the government lost. The reasonings for this prorogation, the accusation that Boris Johnson misled the Queen for his reasonings, and the government could well lose that case, and that might mean that MPs get back into the House of Commons sooner, that they'll be able to inflict more more damaging votes on the Prime Minister. They didn't get what they asked for the other day, the communications about the prorogation, and the Prime Minister needs to figure out what he's going to do, because he said in this speech that he made this afternoon that no matter what, the UK will leave on October 31st. But the Speaker has made clear that he'll allow the full powers and what he called legislative creativity in the House of Commons to make sure that the Prime Minister definitely does right for that extension if he doesn't manage to get a deal from Brussels by that October 17th Council meeting. So a lot of considering for the Prime Minister to do this weekend.
That sounds like an understatement if ever I heard one. Vincent McAviney there with the latest from Westminster. Thank you.